What's up? It's Marco, Sage of Soccer, and today I'll be talking about the U.S. Men's National Team World Cup roster, and it had some decisions in it, I'll say that. Some that I thought were good, that I agreed with, I'm excited to see, and some that I disagree with, and others that I just don't know how to understand. And I think I'll just run through the whole squad as it is, just get into it. In goal, we've got Ethan Horvath, Sean Johnson, and Matt Turner. That leaves off Zach Steffen and Slonina, who are really contending. I really like Matt Turner in goal. He's got to be the starter. We know his issues with his feet, but he's just too reliable of a shot stopper. And to be honest, everybody's like, oh, goalkeeper's not as good as it used to be for the national team. No, Matt Turner's just as good. Like, maybe peak Tim Howard, but I take Matt Turner, I throw him up against Brad Friedel. I throw him up against Tony Meola. I throw him up against even a Tim Howard, a Brad Guzan. Like, the only difference is now the game's evolved and you have to be good with your feet. And Matt Turner, well, he's not good with his feet, but he's just as good as all of our other goalkeepers. I'm confident in Matt Turner. Ethan Horvath is really good to see him. He's proved himself to be a good backup goalkeeper. He can come in off the bench, and he's just somebody who I feel like is reliable. He's probably the most well-grounded keeper here, is good with his feet, and he's just somebody I like having off the bench. And now that he's finally having real playing time under his belt, like, he had to be here. Sean Johnson, like, it's third choice goalkeeper. It doesn't matter. I personally would have had Gabriel Slonina. I might have even had Zach Steffen over him, but I'm not really mad at him being here. It's a third choice goalkeeper, won't fault anything, and it's good to have some experience in this squad. I've said this before a lot. If Brad Guzan was healthy, I would have been fine with us taking Brad Guzan. And if we want to go with somebody experienced, I'm perfectly fine with that, because that means we're trying to win. If we would have gone Slonina to try to prepare him for the 2026 World Cup, I would have understood that, but I like the mentality of bringing a guy who will help us win rather than think about the future. Zach Steffen not being there, I personally don't feel like it's a controversy, but it certainly was an interesting decision. I thought that Zach Steffen was Berhalter's favorite keeper. He is healthy right now, so it appears not. I mean, like, I'm not mad at it. He's made too many mistakes for the national team that I would not have felt reliable with him at the back. And honestly, like, if I'm fine with him not being here strictly because I think it makes it a little bit of like a goalkeeper controversy of who starts over Matt Turner or Zach Steffen. And just by picking Turner, it's just, okay, we know that he's going to be here. Steffen's left off for sure. I feel like he might be a little bit better than Johnson, but I'm perfectly fine with Matt Turner being here. On to center back, and center back is the interesting thing. We'll start with the positives. Cameron Carter-Vickers, great to see him here. He's really started to come into his own. We saw his potential all the way back in 2017, and he's gotten better and better every single year. He's probably the most well-rounded center back here. Very good both physically, defensively, on the ball. He offers everything you want as a center back. I hope that he can become a starter, because I look at that Welsh attack, and there's a lot of just athleticism in there between Daniel James, Brennan Johnson having to deal with a big Kiefer Moore. And I'm not sure if our other center backs are really up for the challenge, but it's good to have Cameron Carter-Vickers in there. Tim Ream, it's good to see him back with the squad. I personally would have had him, just similar to Johnson, have him there as an experienced guy, but he might have to start because I'm personally not too confident in Walker Zimmerman. But Ream, it's good to have him there. If you look at it this way, that Welsh team is a championship-level attack. Tim Ream is an amazing championship player. He hasn't even been bad in the Premier League this year. Again, I probably wouldn't have him start in an ideal setup, though I would have him against Wales, because that'd be a pretty... I like that matchup of him against Wales. I would have liked to see some other center backs there. It's unfortunate Richards got injured, but it is what it is. Walker Zimmerman, he was going to be here. I would have had him on the team, but I think he's going to be a starter. He might even captain the squad, and I don't know. He's kind of just the worst version of Cameron Carter-Vickers all around. He's slower. I think he's worse in the air. He loses a lot of markers on corners. If you go back and watch goals we've conceded, it's kind of noticeable. And just when the game gets raised up to a higher level, I'm not sure how he'll react. But he did deserve to be here. He's been a good, consistent option for us. And I'm glad he's in the squad, but if he starts, it might be a bit of an issue. And Aaron Long is just trash. He's not good enough. At this level, he's already been found out. We've seen him be exposed against Japan. Against Saudi Arabia, he was terrible as well. And, like, listen, I get that you were good once, but your athleticism's gone, and that was the only thing you had going for him. Like, terrible defensively, awful on the ball. Like, the fact that Berhalter's considering this guy just shows that, man, he either really likes his favorites or he doesn't know what he's talking about. So, too bad Aaron Long's here. On to fullback, and I don't really dislike the main guys we're going with, but well, Shaq Moore is here, and I don't understand why. I feel good about Dest. I feel good about Jedi Robinson. Joe Scally is probably the backup for both positions, whether that be he's the backup left back or Dest is the backup left back and Scally would come in as the backup right back. Fine with all that. I'm glad DeAndre Yedlin is there. I personally don't like him as a player that much, but I like having the experienced guy again, like I mentioned with Sean Johnson. But DeAndre Yedlin, he's actually been at a World Cup, and he was actually a good performer at that World Cup. He knows what it's like to be a young player at the tournament, and I like having him there as just to help guide this young team. But I really wouldn't want to have him see the field. But I'm good with having those four guys. Bringing Shaq Moore just seems like I don't get it. He's not a great player. He doesn't have potential. He's probably not going to play. I predicted, I didn't have him on my predictions because I didn't think Berhalter would be that stupid, but I brought up the idea, I think Shaq Moore is probably going to take Joe Scally's spot, but I don't see why he's here. Even if Reggie Cannon was here, I'd understand he likes to do that, center back thing with Cannon. That's a bad idea anyway. I'm not mad Cannon's not here. But it just doesn't make sense for Shaq Moore to be here. I don't understand it. I hope he doesn't see the field. He's not a terrible player or anything. It's just I don't get why he's here, I guess. Onto the midfield, we're going to start with the six. Kellyn, Acosta, Tyler Adams. Those have been locked in for the better part of a year. We know that those two are going to be the guys. Would have liked to see Aiden Morris stay healthy. He'll be good for the next cycle. Tanner Tessman, he's going to have to step up a bit. Johnny Cardoso's really come on lately, but I don't think anybody has an argument to take over that Acosta spot. Even me, you can tell I'm not a big fan of the MLS guys. I would not have made the argument for Johnny Cardoso over Kellyn Acosta. Acosta, he's good in a very specific role where late in a game you could sub him on to protect a lead, but that's the only thing I'd really have Acosta do. He's very limited as a player. If he starts a game, that's might be a bit of a disaster, but in that very specific role, I like him, and while he's not as old as the other players, I think he's the I'm not in the locker room, but from what I've seen, I really like him as a leader. He steps up on the field. He seems to have that intensity about him, and strictly because of that, I'm fine with Kellyn Acosta being here. Tyler Adams, great pick as well. Unfortunately, he doesn't do as well in the system that Greg Berhalter plays as a lone six, but we've seen how good he is for Leeds. He's an obvious selection. He has to be here. Such a great player. On to the more attacking-minded midfielders, the eights. Brenden Aaronson, interesting to see him listed as a midfielder. I really would have liked to see Reyna listed as a midfielder, but guess not. Brenden Aaronson, just great player, amazing presser, looked very good in the final third recently. Such a good dribbler, can take players on. He's somebody who, he's going to see the field in every game, at least he should. Such a talent. Hopefully he'll be, I don't know. I personally like him, so I'd like him to start, but it's a good argument. And if you want to say Weston, McKennie, Yunus, Musah, Gio Reyna over him, great, but he's a player I'd feel comfortable with starting. Then we have Luca de la Torre. Good to see him healthy enough to return to the team. I don't think he's going to be able to play much, and he probably wouldn't see the field too much no matter what, but he's a very good option to bring off the bench. Then we have Weston McKennie. We'll have to see how healthy he is, because when he's at his best, Weston McKennie's a great player for us. When he's at his worst, it is what it is. He's a bit of a liability, and he's just coming back from an injury, so will he be at his best? I don't know, but you definitely want Weston to be here. Yunus Musah, another great option, great young player, a guy who probably will be starting. You'd argue, I personally think he's, a little young. Maybe you don't want to have him as a guy you completely rely on, but he's somebody who had to be here. He's a great player. And then we got Cristian Roldan. Locker room guy, I guess, is the only positive thing you can say, because he's not good enough technically, he's not good enough athletically. He doesn't provide anything that you'd want to for this team. The only thing I can think is he seems to be likable, which I guess, but he doesn't even seem to be a leader. With Kellyn Acosta, okay, I see the leadership traits. With Roldan, it's just he's not even an experienced player. He's 27? There's no real argument of him being here, and if the only thing is, well, we need to have him in the locker room, well, I think that's more of an indictment on the coaching staff not being able to produce a positive environment than it is that we need to bring a guy like Roldan in here. He won't see the field unless there's if we lose our first two games, we'll probably play him against Iran. make it to the third place game, which I would love making to the third place game. Like, those are the only situations we'd see him. He's just not a good enough player. Speaking of not a good enough players from Seattle, next we got Jordan Morris, who, listen, he was a good player once, then he got a terrible knee injury, and then he wasn't the same player. And then he got another terrible knee injury, and now it's like, he's just not good enough. Like, he just doesn't have the athleticism that he used to. He was never that technical of a player. I don't see a situation where we would bring him on the field, and he shouldn't be here. I will say, like, it's unfortunate. Like, part of me is glad he's here because he would have been one of our better players in 2018. So it's good that he gets the experience that was robbed from him by a guy like Paul Arriola, who was trash in that campaign. So it's good to see that he made it over Arriola. Not that either of them should have been here, but yeah, it's disappointing to see him on the field. Then we got Christian Pulisic. Yeah, great pick. I mean, you weren't going to not have Pulisic. Just such a dynamic player. Like, obviously he's going to be here. Same with Reyna and Weah. Like, the only question is, like, who starts between them. Like, Pulisic, you're going to have him on the field. Like, even if it's, like, questionable, like, would you want to have Reyna there so you can have Weah on the field as well? Pulisic looked really good off the bench. But he's just the face of the team at the moment. He's going to start. Gio Reyna, the only thing disappointing is, like, I would have liked it if he was listed in the midfielders, either instead of Aaronson or, like, with Aaronson. But even as a winger, he should be able to get a lot out of his talents. Like, such a great player. Like, the only thing is, like, I wish he would have been in the midfield, but great player. Tim Weah as well. Weah, I will say, is the only player who looks better under Greg Berhalter in the U.S. men's national team than he does for his club. So that's a positive there. He really knows how to play. I'm hoping that he starts. Like, seeing Reyna as a wing as well, or an attacker, like, that's like, okay, will we push Weah to the bench? I think he'd be a very good player off the bench, but I think we need to have him starting. Then we go to striker, and striker is just such a weird position for us. Like, okay, Jesus Ferreira's here, which, again, I don't like. He's probably going to be the starter for us. I don't think he's able to score a goal. He just has not looked good in front of goal when the level of play gets higher. He can drop into the midfield a bit, I guess, but I think every striker that we brought is pretty technical. I just don't think he brings anything new to the table. I would have had Jordan Pefok in the team instead of him. Just, he can, come onto the field, provide a lot of just physical strength. He's our best finisher, probably our best overall striker, even though I don't think he fits with Pulisic and Weah as much as like Josh Sargent or Haji Wright do. And honestly, he's a bit underrated with like his pressing, with his combining play. It has gotten a lot better since he moved to the Bundesliga. But it is what it is. Josh Sargent, really glad to see him here. I think he should start against Wales because, similar to Tim Ream, he does very well against this level of opposition. Like, really good at dropping into the midfield, can combine very well, good hold-up play. Like, he plays as winger for Norwich for a reason because he is technical enough. But the only issue is his finishing, and against the low-level opposition, he can finish very well. So, is what it is. I think he does very well. Then we have Haji Wright, who I'm good with Haji Wright being here. I think he's a very good player. You've seen how good he is with in Turkey. With he's got very good finishing. Has come a long way. I'm glad to see him do well because back in like 2016 or 2017, like when he was learning under David Villa at the New York Cosmos, like I was really excited for him. He went to Schalke. He's looked very good. He's one of our top talents. And with him, Luke De La Torre, Pulisic, Weston, Tyler Adams, like we've got a group that's been playing together for a while, and that's very exciting. And Haji Wright, like very technical player as well, like really good with his hold-up play. He is very big and very strong, though he's not like the physical presence that like a Jordan Pefok or a Daryl TK will give you. He's a lot more of like a more finesse player, but he does have that height in him, so maybe he could be a threat on set pieces. He has scored a few headers in Turkey, so I feel very good about Haji Wright being here. It is weird that Ricardo Pepi isn't here, though, because we called him in September when he was playing terribly. But now, when he's finally hit his form for the first time of the year, this is when we bench him? Like, why? What's the rationale behind that? Like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm fine, like, Pepe, I would have had him as a third choice striker. Like, I would have had Pfalk and Sargent ahead of him. I think him and Haji Wright are at a very similar level. I think Haji Wright's slightly better at the moment, but with Ricardo Pepi's potential, I would have brought him here so he'd be more prepared for 2026. Like, I can understand you think he's the fourth best striker, but if you're Greg Berhalter, you brought him in so many times. Why stop now? And while we're at it, why did you stop bringing Areola in now? Because he's been terrible for a long time. He shouldn't have been here. He should have never been recalled to this team after he failed to qualify in 2017. Like, why drop him now? Why'd you waste all the time with Areola? Malik Tillman as well. I would have liked Malik Tillman to be here, especially over Cristian Roldan. I will say that I am kind of glad to be wrong. I thought that Ricardo Pepi and Malik Tillman had been promised spots in the national team. I'm glad that I was proven wrong about that because that would have been messed up. But still, I really would have liked Malik Tillman to be here, but it's just a very interesting squad. Like, why did you waste so much time on Zach Steffen? He hasn't suddenly gotten worse. If anything, he's starting to play better. Ricardo Pepi's just starting to play a bit better. Why drop him now? Like, Reggie Cannon's starting to play center back a little bit more. Why drop him now? Like, why did you waste all this time with players who weren't good enough, were never going to be good enough, to just drop them at the last step? Like, I don't get that. Like, Mark McKenzie, throw him in that too. Though I like Mark McKenzie, but he's not ready. So it just doesn't really make sense for Greg Berhalter. Like, I look at this team, like, I like Matt Turner, I like Cameron Carter-Vickers and Tim Ream, I like Dest and Jedi, I like Adams, I like Weston, Musah, Aaronson, Pulisic, Reyna, Weah, Luca, whoever plays there. I like Wright and Sargent up top. Like, if we go with the best possible team, we could be very good in a great situation. But the depth is just an issue because we didn't test out these people. Like, why not give Haji Wright a rep last month if you were, like, concerned about him or Pepi? Like, I don't get Berhalter at all. But, yeah, overall, like, I feel pretty decent about this team. It could have been worse. I think, ideally, we have all good starters, but this is Greg Berhalter. Like, listen, I like Hayes Ferreira's potential, but he's not a striker. And if we start him up front, it's going to be a bit of an issue. Aaron Long is probably going to start, and him and Walker Zimmerman together, well, with Matt Turner at the back, like, we're not going to be able to build out the back if we go with Long and Zimmerman. Like, it is what it is. Like, if we put Adams at a 6, we know that's not his best position. And hopefully we do the most with this roster because there is enough here to be able to get out of the group stage. But Wales just named their squad today, and I think it looks pretty good. And we're going to have to actually put our best foot forward if we want to get out of this group stage because we're against real teams now, against teams that have gotten out of, like, big group stages before. Like, we've seen Wales, they still have a good core of their team from that semifinal run in Euro 2016. They just advanced out of a group in the Euro. Like, we have to make sure we're ready to go. But if we are, and if we put our best foot forward, this team has enough to get to the knockout round. Man, Senegal just got a huge injury. Qatar's probably going to advance because they're the host. Like, we could easily get an easy match in the round of 16. Dude, then we get to the quarterfinals, and I feel like at that point, anything's possible. This team has the talent to be the best ever American squad, and I think we will just be able to do that. We just need to put the best players in the position to succeed, and I think we'll be able to be a great team. And yeah, that's all I've talked about. I'm really excited for this World Cup. Team could have been better, could have been much worse, though. And yeah, that's all I'll talk right now. See ya.